So, folks, we gotta talk about the fact that Donald Trump, senile, incompetent beyond reason, dementia-addled beyond the measure, number one, just had to go into Walter Reed the other day, apparently on yet another annual trip for his annual physical. Weird how he's had to go like 5 times over the last month or so. But I'm sure he can name more zoo animals. I bet he can do it under duress. Now, I have to tell you guys, it's really, really scary that this madman has his finger on the nuclear codes. He has the ability to order a military, seemingly without any congressional oversight whatsoever, to wage war against countries at the drop of a hat. And, just as an FYI, and I've talked about this a little bit in previous weeks, there has been a ramping up, gradual but consistent, in rhetoric from the Trump administration targeting Cuba, as well as a tightening of the blockade. Oil, for example, has largely been not allowed to be shipped to Cuba. Their entire economy right now is limping along in shambles due to lack of oil. And there is, I gotta be honest, a lot of the signs are indicating that since Donald Trump is so dissatisfied with how Iran has gone, he is now turning his attention towards Cuba in order to try and both restore his own status as well as fulfill some, wish list items from people like Marco Rubio. I mean, this ran just today in Politico. Yes, Trump might really attack Cuba. So I don't know how many of you had Bay of Pigs 2 on your lists, on your bingo scorecard, but we're getting awfully close here. This is from one of Politico's senior foreign affairs correspondents. Let's take a quick look here. The Trump administration has been dancing around the question of whether it will carry out military strikes against Cuba. I'm told it is increasingly willing to take such a step. That's a significant escalation from a few months ago, when officials were primarily focused on using economic and diplomatic pressure to squeeze the communist regime in Havana. Because one of the things that was happening, and we've seen happen, is, of course, the blockade on oil. And that, in turn, has led to domestic crisis in Cuba. And what the Trump administration was hoping would be that this would foment some kind of internal revolution, pro-capitalism revolution against the government of Cuba. And that has not really materialized. And instead, what we've now seen, the last I talked about Cuba on stream, reconnaissance flights and drone movements around Cuba had massively increased from the Trump administration. And so that really got me worried. And that's what gives a lot of credence to what's happening here now. A U.S. official and a person familiar with the administration's discussions on Cuba told me that President Donald Trump and his aides have grown frustrated with the U.S. pressure campaign, which includes starving the island of fuel, but not led Cuba's leaders to agree to significant economic and political reforms. So they're taking the military option more seriously than previously. How dare they not fold immediately under any kind of pressure? Last week, news broke that the U.S. is moving forward with indicting former Cuban President Raul Castro, the 94-year-old brother of late Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. Essentially, what this might look like, right, is not necessarily a full-fledged invasion of Cuba, but rather tactical bombing of different sites across Cuba, as well as, much like with Venezuela, an attempt to send in an armed team to extract a 94-year-old man from Cuba. Yeah, basically Donald Trump is just chasing after that high from Venezuela where they got Nicolas Maduro. I gotta be honest, guys, this is not great.
That any U.S. military action against Cuba would lead to a, quote, bloodbath, and one with incalculable consequences for regional peace and stability. Diaz-Canel issued the warning in a post on X and added that, quote, Cuba does not pose a threat. His post follows an Axios report published a day earlier citing classified intelligence that said Cuba had acquired more than 300 military drones. The report said Cuba had discussed plans to use them to attack the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, U.S. military vessels, and Key West, Florida. But Cuba said the U.S. was fabricating a case to justify potential military intervention. In Havana, some residents said they would resist any attack.
I know for a fact that Cuba is a strong country. The Cubans are very brave, and we're not going to back down. If they come, they'll have to fight, because Cuba will fight back. That's what I can tell you. My country, whether we're hungry or not, no matter what, will fight back. They'd better not come, because there's going to be a fight, you see.
Another resident said he supported talks between the U.S. and Cuba.
There must be an agreement between the two sides to talk and negotiate whatever they want, and Cuba must also enforce its laws. Do you understand? But they shouldn't invade.
Also, shout out to this guy at the back who's showing how strong he is by lifting up that box.
Its laws.
Full of, like, fruit? Apples, maybe? I don't know.
Do you understand? But they shouldn't invade Cuba. Cuba will defend itself at all times, but it will never hand over the country.
I just love the human impulse to, like, see a camera and show off for it. Like, it's great. It's wonderful.
It will never hand it over. Do you understand?
Cuba has come under increasing strain since the United States cut off its energy supplies after arresting the president of its then ally, Venezuela, in January. Tensions between the two countries have risen sharply in recent days. Reuters reported last week, citing a U.S. Department of Justice source, that prosecutors plan to indict former Cuban leader Raul Castro over Cuba's 1996 shooting down of two planes operated by a humanitarian group.
Yeah, so can we just, like, pause for a moment and focus on the fact that the United States is trying to leak classified intel to Axios to talk about how Cuba has 300 drones. A whole 300 drones, everybody. How many drones does the U.S. have? The United States operates over 16,000 drones. And honestly, that seems pretty low, especially considering this official press release from the Department of War last year. War Department asks industry to make more than 300,000 drones quickly and cheaply. Oh no! They have 300 drones! Oh no! This is like when one of the charges against Nicolas Maduro was that he had machine guns. And it's just like, yeah, so? He was the leader of another country. I would not be surprised if every world leader owned didn't own at least a few guns. This is like saying, oh no, everybody, the Vatican got its hands on 10 AK-47s. Time for us to invade the Vatican. Oh no, did you know that in Mexico they have access to pistols? We just realized that they have access to handguns in Mexico. Time to invade Mexico. Like, this is insane. This is just like an insane bullshit excuse to try and fabricate some kind of military intervention against Cuba. And, like, there's no reason. There is no pretext. There is no threat posed by Cuba to the United States. Did you know that in Vatican City, there's a man who wields the power of an almighty God? He cannot be allowed to live. A man who can wield the force of a quintillion nuclear weapons in the palm of his hand. He cannot be suffered to live. We must launch an entire operation to free Vatican City. Like, it's just ludicrous. It is some psycho nonsense coming from the United States government as a matter of policy. One of Cuba's number one exports is doctors. It is insane. It is bullshit. And like, frankly, if any of the people you know are falling for this, you owe it to them and to yourself to just point out this is absolute nonsense. We cannot be like, oh well, theoretically, the Pope might have a golden blessed Glock, and if we, he might use it to attack a military base. Like it's just do not give this any amount of credence whatsoever. No amount of credence whatsoever. Those handguns aren't registered. Send in the SEALs. Did you know that Antarctica and the Arctic regions, where people are believed to not be able to inhabit, did you know that some of those rocky islands, they have their own Navy SEALs? They'll even fight for free or for fish. They cannot be suffered to live. God, it is wild living in the heart of just like the evil imperial power. And like other countries around the world, here's the BBC. Other countries around the world like reported accurately. Like Cuba accuses US of building fraudulent case for military action. Because like, yeah, it's bullshit. They can't even like have their cars operating. You think they pose an actual threat with 300 drones? Oh yeah, we got our hands on 300 drones. Time to attack the US Navy. That'll go well. Like, come on. Get your head out of your ass and actually understand how the world works. Let's take a look at how local news is handling this story.
Cuba's government appears to be disputing a report it poses a drone threat against the U.S.
I guess not local news, CBS Morning News.
Axios yesterday reported Cuba has acquired more than 300 military drones. According to that outlet, Havana is discussing plans to launch an attack on the U.S. military base.
I know you
in
probably
Guantanamo
muted
Bay.
Donos, but I wanted to say Nick Shirley going to Cuba was a sign of things to come.
Nick Shirley got the secret intel about the drones. He didn't really understand what was going on, but, he got the real intel somehow. Like, maybe he tripped on, I don't know, a piece of trash and fell down like a ladder and woke up with the intel in his hands.
After that was released, Cuba's foreign minister accused the U.S. of building a fraudulent case to justify sanctions and potential military action. And we should note the foreign minister did not directly reference the Axios report we just discussed. But Mark Caputo can tell us what's going on. He's the Axios White House correspondent behind that reporting. He's also a CBS News contributor. Mark, good morning. Thanks for being with us. Tell us about what you found regarding drones, and what do you make of Cuba's statement on potential military action that came out a short time after your reporting?
Well, first off, Cuba's not denying it has drones.
Why would they do that?
Clerics can use slings, and Glocks are just more technologically advanced slings. So why shouldn't the Pope have access to the holy Glock of Chalcedon?
Indeed, Netanyahu, impeccable logic. But I want, did you know militaries have weapons? Did you know that in 2026, children fly drones these days? I don't know, this would be this just in. Haiti has Atari 2600s for use in the military. Okay,
has weapons?
Yeah, of course.
Next, you're gonna tell me that a bar has beer or that an arcade has games. Or worst of all, that a republic might have a vote.
Indeed, Red Rudy. I might just talk about the value of democracy.
United States intelligence agencies say it has as many as 300 or acquired them since 2023 or so, midway through Biden's last term or Biden's only term. As for what the intelligence agencies say they found is that after the toppling of Nicolas Maduro and the rapprochement between the United States and Venezuela, the U.S. began learning about the drone program, the drone acquisitions of Cuba. They say, as I said, it's about 300. They don't have exact numbers. They say these are stashed throughout the country. And
they're stashed throughout the country. The U.S. on a whim requested 300,000 to be manufactured, in addition to the thousands we already have. they're stashed around the country. My blood pressure is spiking so hard. This is so infuriating. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 10 tier 1 subs. What is this? Oh, God. Nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys. My day be so fine. Amnesia, Bay of Pigs. That's good. That's some good shit right there. Thank you very, very much.
And that Cuba has looked in recent weeks to acquire more, mainly from Russia. These are from Russia and China. In these discussions that the United States says it has overheard or intercepted, the Cubans have talked about various targets to use, mainly in case there is a U.S. invasion, which is...
Oh, that's a really key bit of info here. So it's not as the Trump administration is portraying in case, of a dastardly attack by the devious and duplicitous Cubans. It's if the United States attacks them, how they would plan to retaliate in order to assure some kind of military response, as opposed to just keeling over and dying, I suppose. Okay. Paladin, thank you for the $10 dono. I heard the Holy See is just a giant oil reservoir. That pointy hat is clearly made of illegal drugs. Time to freedom the Vatican. Yeah, freedom isn't something you believe. Freedom is something you do with a gun.
An understandable concern of Cuba's because the United States posture has become increasingly hostile toward the island. Now, President Trump hasn't ruled out invading the island, nor has he ruled it in. Those are part of active discussions. But what's pretty clear right now is the United States is sending a message to Cuba saying, we know that you have these capabilities. We know that you've discussed hitting these targets for one reason or another. And so therefore, it's sort of time to make a deal. The United States has been trying to get Cuba to have a free country, free elections, freed political prisoners, the right for labor to organize, and also land that had been seized by the revolution to be returned.
And when did the U.S. become the villain? This is so sad.
God, we want land seized by the revolution to be returned to its rightful private owners. You mean the land seized from fucking plantation owners? Yeah, we got to make sure all those plantation owners get their land back. No, fuck that. Fuck you. God, it's genuinely okay, we won't invade you if you put back your slavery system. All right? What war? Only excursions here? Oh, that's right. I forgot. No war, only excursion. Donald Trump hasn't gone to war in this term. Sure, he bombed another country literally today. Oh no, he bombed Nigeria several days ago. My bad. Time is difficult to track these days.
To U.S. businesses and U.S. companies since basically 1959, and the Cuban government has refused. So what's different now over these years is that Cuba's economy is in shambles. It's in really rough shape, and it doesn't look as if the Trump administration has any intention of backing off.
Right. We know they've had fuel shortages, which have led to long-term blackouts there. And in the background of all this, sources tell CBS News the U.S. is trying to indict Cuba's former president, Raul Castro. Is the U.S., I guess, perhaps doing that in a way to have leverage in these negotiations?
That's a great question. It's clear that the United States is doing this to put more pressure on the regime. Now, whether it works or not is another matter. Raul Castro was, 92 or so? I should know his exact age, and so I apologize for having forgotten at the moment. And this would be for an alleged crime that happened in 1996. That was the shooting down of 2 rescue aid planes from a group called Brothers to the Rescue that were based in Miami that were dropping supplies to rafters who were fleeing Cuba after the last period where Cuba's economy really started to spiral down in the mid-90s after the collapse of the Soviet Union when it lost its patron state in Russia. Since then, the Cuban government had sort of recovered by...
Worth noting,
America, home of the free unless you have oil, home of the brave unless you are held to equal standards, home of democracy unless you're a leftist.
Worth noting, by the way, that the Brothers to the Rescue organization was founded and headed by a man who claimed in court to be a CIA operative, as an FYI. So just something to be aware of on that one.
Establishing close ties with Venezuela.
Like the reason Cuba fired upon these planes is because the Cuban government considers Brothers to the Rescue to be a terrorist organization run by the CIA,
which was supplying it with oil. Some of that oil Cuba used for free, the other oil it sold on the market, but now that's gone as well. So in the meantime, the Trump administration and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, have opened high-level talks with Cuba's leaders, including the grandson of Raul Castro, Raulito Castro. How this indictment, if it is handed down, it looks like it's going to be Wednesday, will affect those talks or the ability to sort of effectuate change is a big open question. It does look as if the United States is probably less interested in believing that it can force a deal or deal makers to come to the table than it is just increasing pressure and increasing pressure and increasing pressure.
Well, Raul Castro, you were close. He's 94 and he's got his 95th birthday 2 weeks from Wednesday.
God, oh God, oh God, oh God. I just realized the Trumpiest thing that could possibly happen is that the Trump administration has planned an extraction for Raul Castro's birthday. I feel like this is maybe one of my stupidest predictions, but if I had to predict something, I'm just going to say it. I think they might try and extract Raul Castro on his birthday. Like, the Trump administration is that level of petty. Happy birthday, boyo. Now get in the chopper. When's his birthday? 2 weeks from Wednesday. They're having like high-level discussions on Wednesday when they hand down that indictment, and then 2 weeks from that is the is Raul Castro's birthday. I don't know anything for certain here, but I do know that like these talks are not going to de-escalate the Trump administration. And historically, what the Trump administration has done when, meeting other nations for talks is to weaken, especially other nations that are subject to like American aggression, like Cuba, is to use talks as a cover to make guards be let down and then take aggressive action. Fuck, I hope that doesn't happen. Let's take a look at the local news reporting, because I am interested in how this is being spun for folks locally in Florida.
Tension between the U.S. and Cuba is rising amid reports that Raul Castro, Cuba's 94-year-old former president, may soon face indictment. Word is Washington is preparing that indictment. It would require confirmation by a grand jury and appears tied to the 1996 downing of two small planes belonging to a Cuban exile group, Brothers to the Rescue. The aircraft, which had been searching for rafters fleeing across the Florida Straits, had flown over Havana to drop leaflets when they were intercepted by a Cuban jet. Well, now the communists...
Also, a lot of the reporting does tend to leave out the fact that these particular planes were flying over Havana. That would be like if an enemy nation had planes flying over Washington, D.C. Just like as like a point of reference here. This would be North Korea flying an aircraft over Washington, D.C. And like, how do you think that would go for that North Korean aircraft? Not very well. It would not go great. It's so
Only
silly.
The truly experience life. Trump made $375 million in business and $4 billion since inauguration. Irish Catholic boy XXX.
It's truly disgusting. The level of like corruption the Trump administration is undergoing right now, that Trump's finances are undergoing right now. Like, I haven't even dived into the story about like his roughly 1.8, 1.77 whatever $billion slush fund that he just gave himself with no congressional oversight. Not to mention the fact that he's like his like peace, like extravaganza. I forget what it's called. The peace group that he formed for the Middle East has him as the chair and like also presides over billions of unaccountable dollars.
That's on the level of leaving out that Trump had sexual relations with children alongside his best friend Epstein from all coverage.
It's true. Like, I don't know. The Epstein survivors just testified in Congress like last week, and it's barely been a blip. God.
Led island state just 90 miles off the coast of Florida is getting ready for the worst. Joining me on the morning show, Lindsay Lizopoulos-Friedman, an attorney with Holtzman Vogel. She represents individuals against the Republic of Cuba and took part in investigations of corruption by the Cuban government. Good morning.
Good morning, Bruce.
So, Lindsay, the U.S. is going to need a grand jury to get that indictment, but that shouldn't be the difficult part. To offer some perspective, would it be the same type of indictment that led to the capture of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, in your estimation?
Well,
God, I can't wait until I see every single Republican in Trump's administration, like, put on trial for, like, being complicit with, you know, like, murdering random people in boats in the Atlantic and the Pacific. Like violating like the Constitution on a near daily basis. I don't know. It'd be nice to see some kind of justice in the world.
At this point, all options are on the table. The indictment against Maduro focused on narco trafficking. Here, what we could see against the Castro regime could possibly include narco trafficking, money laundering, and certainly, as you already mentioned, the murder of the Brothers to the Rescue down planes. And certainly that is going to be at least a focal point, if not truly what drives this indictment. The Southern District of Florida has for decades, it's been no secret, been investigating the regime and investigating possible charges to bring. You know, the indictment against Maduro was actually brought back in 2011. It wasn't unveiled until 2010, as we call it, unsealed. And then, of course, the arrest happened just a few months ago. So this indictment has probably been in the works for a long time as well, Bruce. And I would imagine that at this point, the U.S. government has likely already obtained that indictment in order to be.
I mean, I would have to say, definitionally, it's been in the works for a very long time, since like 1996, right?
Where we are in this pressure campaign.
Look, it's no secret the U.S. has been pushing for change in Havana, either the fall of the current regime or at least the opening up of the economy to U.S. interests. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who, by the way, is Cuban-American, said, "I don't think we're going to be able to change the trajectory of Cuba as long as these people are in charge." And President Trump made it clear he wants to, his words, take over the country. Lindsay, Cuba's said to be preparing for the worst, and even though they're enduring 20-hour blackouts there because of energy issues, is the U.S. underestimating their resolve to defend themselves?
Do you think that if we attacked them, they would defend themselves? Like, I have to be honest with you. The level of just insulated lack of understanding from people in the United States about how getting attacked works for other countries, I don't get it. Like, that guy's old enough. He remembers 9/11. Hey, what happened after 9/11? Did the United States surrender to Osama bin Laden? Is that how the 9/11 worked? Oh, it actually like strengthened the resolve of the United States to like engage in like a massive war and occupation that killed hundreds of thousands of people. Oh, okay. Like, what winds up happening when you attack another nation is that it strengthens their resolve to defend themselves and to project that defense outward as much as possible to prevent themselves from getting attacked again. It's nuts. TaffyBot, thank you for the gifted membership. Appreciate you.
Absolutely not, Bruce. It's really just the reality that the murderous Castro regime is underestimating the will and drive of the United States and the Cuban.
I don't think that's true at all. Like, out of any place on the planet, Cuba is keenly aware of the asymmetrical nature of any conflict with the U.S.
With incoming German invasion, they had to prepare themselves for the worst.
God damn it, Saki. No, the Castro regime is underestimating us. they have known that the US wants to invade them for like the last 100 years. Like, they've been keenly aware. Not 100 years, I'm exaggerating for effect. But like, since the Cuban Revolution, the threat of a US invasion has been like the number one threat to the existence of the Cuban state as it exists right now. So like, we've tried it before. We've like tried like 56 times to kill like Fidel Castro. Like, the number of assassination attempts, the number of attempted overthrows of the Cuban government, like, Cuba is certainly not underestimating the United States. They are well aware that the US possesses incredibly advanced technological capabilities. But like, they will dig in and they will defend themselves, and it would be very surprising to me if like the entire country of Cuba was not riddled with bunkers from which they could defend themselves. It'd be incredibly surprising to me if, like, the entirety of Cuba wasn't effectively one gigantic bunker to resist any attempt to put boots on the ground in Cuba.
American diaspora. That's a diaspora that is incredibly involved in the United States. They have been incredibly productive, industrious. Even as you just mentioned, our own Secretary of State is Cuban American, which shows just how hardworking and far that diaspora has come. You know, the regime is in its death throes, Bruce, and that's what we saw over the weekend. The latest news is that there are drones, over 300 drones that the Cuban regime has.
300 drones. Imagine how many attacks they could make with those. At least 300, Bruce.
Which of course could reach Florida. And that is news that the Cuban regime leaked because they are desperate. And there's a huge difference between the regime, who is desperate to keep its death grip on power, and the Cuban people, who are desperate and, as you said, suffering during this humanitarian crisis. So I don't think that there is an underestimation at all. I think really we are coming to a head where the regime is completely losing its ability to maintain that death grip.
Implications for Cuban Americans?
I think that the implications for Cuban Americans are very hopeful. I think that they are concerned about family members there, but they are hopeful for a free and open economy where they could better support their family members and where we would see a lessening of the humanitarian crisis. And of course, a resolve or a lessening of the tension and the possible national security threats that Cuba truly does create for the United States.
So Cuba, as I mentioned, is just 90 miles off Florida's coast. What's Florida's stake in all of this?
Florida's stakes could not be greater, both for positive and negative reasons. On the positive on the positive side, as we just said, Florida really is right there. It's 90 miles away. It is the gateway for Latin America. It's the cultural and business capital for Latin America. So opening up Cuba creates an incredible opportunity for trade, for
free market expansion, Bruce. Free market expansion. All right. So all I'll have to say here is, like, I do think that there is perhaps some good indications that there is going to be like some kind of military action against Cuba, in addition to perhaps an extraction of Raul Castro. You've got a statement in El País International, right, from Jorge Mas, who is portrayed in this piece as anti-Castro leader in exile. And he says, what Trump did with Venezuela works there, but it won't work in Cuba. And so part of what he's saying there is effectively, like, if the United States tries to invade Cuba, any kind of military action there is not going to work. And so what he's trying to push for is some kind of, like, agreement with the current Cuban government that will transition it to a free market society. And, like, I don't think that's going to happen either. But let's just take a quick look here. Better known for his wealth and his sporting and his business ventures than for his political involvement, the apparent imminence of change in Cuba has drawn Mas, who has never set foot in Cuba but hopes to do so soon, into a process in which he says he is aligned with and working alongside the US government. Everything is moving very fast. We are talking about months, he warns. How many months? It could happen from one day to the next. I estimate before the end of the summer. Maybe not even that long. We will see changes within weeks. The situation is unsustainable. The system does not work. Cuba is a failed state, incapable of providing its citizens with basic things, food, electricity, water, let alone opportunity, dreams, work, a future. And so he thinks that there is going to be some kind of regime change operation, though whether it is going to be a worsening of the blockade around Cuba, because right now Mexico's ships can go through, certain Russian vessels have been allowed through, that it is very, very limited. And so we've got folks waiting in the wings in this case, working with the US government to try and overthrow the Cuban government. And, while this guy is not saying violence would be successful, he's also not saying that the Trump administration has ruled it out. Look, genuinely, look out for Bay of Pigs too, okay, folks? We're in wackadoo nonsense crazy times, and the Trump administration is doing everything it can to try and recapture Venezuela, that Venezuela high, try and go back and play the popular hits, but it's not going to work. It is not going to work. I'm really, really worried about what will happen if the United States does in fact try this. I'm so tired of this shit. Yeah, it is exhausting. But folks, remember, it doesn't have to be this way. Get involved with your local political organizations. Get involved with your local Democrats. Get involved with your local DSA. Make your Democrats more progressive. Kick out those corporate shills. There's no reason anyone who is in the bank for lobbyists should have any place in your local democratic process, in your local Democratic Party. There's no reason folks shouldn't be organizing alongside labor in their local DSAs. Make your DSA more effective. Make your Dems more progressive. Help them stand for working class values. If you need help getting started, join our Discord. Reach out to GamerG for help joining your local DSA. Reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. And folks, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. Comments longer than 8 words really help in the algorithm. And last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfortable, it is sexy lingerie that is non-tucking. So go check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com, and link down in the description so for your ease of access. Go check it out. And with that, let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.